The S&P 500 is one of the most widely watched indices in the world, and it's on the brink of a massive decline. Analysts are predicting that it'll tank at least 27% this year, and that's just the beginning. The signs are all there: rising interest rates, inflation fears, geopolitical tensions, and more. If you have investments in the stock market, it's time to pay attention. This video will explore why the S&P 500 is headed for a significant downturn, what it could mean for your portfolio, and how to protect yourself from the impending crash. So let's dive right in. Jeremy Grantham, the legendary investor and founder of GMO, has delivered a foreboding message to the financial world, sending shockwaves through Wall Street. With a reputation for being one of the most accurate predictors of market crashes, Grantham's dire warning has left many wondering if a catastrophic economic downturn is just around the corner. According to Grantham, the S&P 500 index, which has been on a bull run for the past several years, is poised for a massive plunge. His predictions suggest the market could crash by over 50%, sending investors into a frenzy of panic and chaos. But it's not just the stock market that is at risk. Grantham warns that the financial system is under immense strain, and the collapse of SVB is just the beginning. The economy is facing a downturn, and more financial fiascos could emerge as a result. And make no mistake, Grantham's warning should not be taken lightly. With his decades of experience in the industry, he's seen it all before, and his words carry significant weight. Grantham has been issuing warnings of an impending market crash for over 2 years, citing an alarming bubble in asset prices. His latest prediction is that the S&P 500 could plummet by more than 50% to around 2,000 points in a worst-case scenario. Even a more conservative estimate suggests a significant 27% dip to around 3,000 points, which may not see the index bottom out until next year. Grantham's warning is rooted in history. According to him, every great bubble in history has eventually resulted in an economic downturn, making the possibility of bubbles bursting in both the stock market and the real estate sector reasonably ominous. His concerns about an asset bubble are likewise rooted in the high valuations of stocks, real estate, and other assets. He believes the markets are overpriced and the current economic environment is unsustainable. According to him, investors are ignoring the risks and betting on future growth, which is not supported by fundamentals. Grantham's predictions are increasingly gaining support from other market watchers. A recent report by Goldman Sachs suggests that the current bull market is overextended and stocks are vulnerable to a significant correction. Other analysts have also expressed concerns about rising inflation, supply chain disruptions, and geopolitical risks that could destabilize the markets. As it stands, the potential impact of a market crash could be far-reaching. It could lead to massive job losses, bankruptcies, and a severe recession, especially as governments and central banks presently have limited tools to mitigate the damage, mainly if the crash is severe. And while investors brace themselves for the worst, the potential impact of a market crash is increasingly being predicted to result in massive wealth destruction and economic chaos on a global scale. Grantham believes the economy is akin to a delicate ecosystem, and any disruption can cause a ripple effect that impacts every aspect of life. To him, economic stability is achievable only if every individual, corporation, and government agency acts responsibly and adheres to sound financial practices. Additionally, Grantham is likewise convinced that the world is at the cusp of a recessionary period, and the recent collapse of Silicon Valley Bank is only the tip of the iceberg. According to him, the current economic climate is marred by the prevalence of risky investments and loans that have artificially propped up the stock market, making it highly susceptible to sudden shocks. His immediate prediction is that the financial system will continue to be in stress for the foreseeable future, and there's a high probability of more significant debacles occurring soon. Grantham has compared the current situation to a ticking time bomb that's waiting to explode, with the potential to cause widespread damage. In his words, other things will break, and who knows what they will be. We're by no means finished with the stress to the financial system. He's also made an analogy of the situation, comparing the present strain on the financial system to water pressing against a dam and threatening to burst through. He foresees the possibility of the dam bursting, causing a massive flood that could inundate the entire economy. This flood could lead to a credit crunch hitting all sectors, especially commercial real estate and other debt-reliant industries, further exacerbating the already dire situation. In essence, Grantham's words paint a picture of a fragile financial system that's poised for significant correction and suggest that only a collective effort by all stakeholders can prevent a complete collapse of the economy. And as the market has continued to tremble under the weight of economic uncertainty, Grantham has been quick to point fingers at the Federal Reserve for its repeated failures. He's criticized the central bank for what he calls a reckless and short-sighted approach to monetary policy. According to him, the Federal Reserve's penchant for lowering interest rates and flooding the market with liquidity has created a vicious cycle of asset price bubbles and painful crashes. Basically, the economy's become addicted to cheap money, driving up prices for stocks, real estate, and other assets. When the bubble inevitably bursts, investors will be left holding the bag, while the rest of the economy suffers from the fallout. But in typical Grantham style, he wasn't just content with simply criticizing the Federal Reserve. He also had a solution in mind. He called Fed Chair Jerome Powell to take a page from the playbook of his predecessor, Paul Volcker, known as the inflation dragon slayer. In the 80s, Volcker waged a fierce battle against runaway inflation, raising interest rates to punishing levels to bring prices under control. Grantham argued that Powell should follow Volcker's footsteps and take a more aggressive approach to monetary policy. Grantham insisted that only by weaning the economy off its addiction to cheap money could the Federal Reserve avoid perpetuating the boom and bust cycle. Ever since the S&P 500 reached its peak in early 2020, U.S. stocks have plummeted by approximately 15%. While the reason for this downward spiral has been attributed to the central bank's increasing borrowing cost, Grantham believes this is just the beginning of a much more significant decline. The cheap money that took over the market has caused all sorts of assets to be overvalued. Even government bonds, real estate, and cryptocurrencies have experienced unprecedented growth due to the availability of cheap money. Unfortunately, history shows that every bubble eventually burst, leading to a recession. Grantham's predictions have therefore come out as very dire, implying that this bubble may be the worst one yet. Even Silicon Valley Bank, which was once seen as a financial powerhouse, suffered from the massive losses on its bond holdings. According to Grantham, the sudden spike in interest rates and the subsequent fall in prices of U.S. government debt triggered the downfall of SVB and could still cause more financial powerhouses to fail. And in a similar scenario, the Swiss government was forced to undertake an emergency rescue of Credit Suisse due to the turmoil in the market. Although the bond market may be close to correcting itself, the stock market remains dangerously overvalued. Grantham believes that the overvalued stocks and assets have created a bubble that'll burst sooner or later, causing widespread financial chaos. And as such, investors need to brace themselves for a tough time ahead as the inevitable recession looms. And as the housing market experiences a sudden decline in the wake of rising mortgage rates, many homeowners feel the pinch. But for others, the situation is much worse. In cities like San Francisco and New York, where the cost of living is already sky high, the housing crisis is exacerbating an already dire situation. Homelessness rates are rising. Families are being forced to make tough choices between paying rent or buying groceries. Meanwhile, as investors speculate about the Federal Reserve's next move, Grantham has likewise warned that inflation could be a significant threat in the long term. According to the seasoned expert, another colossal driver of inflation in the U.S. in recent years has been climate change, which is causing more frequent and intense natural disasters. In 2021 alone, the U.S. was hit by a record-breaking number of hurricanes, wildfires, and heat waves. These events disrupt the supply chain of commodities and increase demand for certain goods such as lumber and building materials. Moreover, the world's population is getting older, which could have severe implications for the workforce. As people retire, fewer workers will take their place, leading to labor shortages and higher wages. This could in turn lead to higher prices for goods and services as companies pass on the cost to consumers. In light of this, Grantham has also drawn parallels between current market conditions and the tech bubble of 2000 and the housing market collapse of 2008. According to Grantham, the most worrying factor this time around is the simultaneous occurrence of bubbles in the stock market and the real estate market, a scenario reminiscent of Japan's economic downturn in the 1990s. Japan's economy has yet to fully recover from the long period of stagnation that resulted from the bursting of these two bubbles. Grantham points out that this is not only concerning for the U.S., but also for the global economy, given that the U.S. is the largest economy in the world. Grantham is particularly concerned about the state of the U.S. commercial real estate industry, which has been struggling in recent weeks due to rising interest rates and the growing trend of remote work. In Grantham's own words, the office market in particular is in a state of ragged disarray. With the sector heavily reliant on debt financing, fears about its health have been mounting. The prospect of a lost decade is daunting, But Grantham remains optimistic that it's not too late to avoid a worst-case scenario. He's continued to stress the importance of recognizing the warning signs and taking appropriate action to mitigate the risks. As he puts it, the sooner we recognize the dangers and take action, the better off we'll be in the long run.